Good evening. I will call this meeting to order at 6 p.m. Mission statement. Allendale Public Schools commit to educate, inspire, and support all students. Amy, do you have the roll? Very good. Would you all please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Public participation process. Members of the audience are welcome to make comments at the time designated on the agenda. Please register on the sign-up sheet in the back and limit your comments to 3 minutes when your name is called. Out of respect for all individuals, please refrain from personal criticisms in an open forum. You can refer to policy 167.3 for more information. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
Motion to approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
All right, motion by Pam, seconded by Kevin to approve the agenda. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say the same. Motion passes. The agenda is approved. All right, next is superintendent comment. Dr. Cooper?
Yep, thank you. Just wanted to give everybody a heads up that I will be going for spring break as well. We're leaving on Friday, but we will not be back till April 11th. For the 4 days that we have school after spring break, Mr. Vanderlaan will be in charge of the district, so if you have any immediate needs, please give him a call. We are going to be in South America. I'm not sure how much access I'll have to email or text or anything, but we will be checking as frequently as we can for email. So reach out to me if you have questions. That's all I have for my comment.
All right, any questions on that? Anybody? All right, back at you, Dr. Cooper, with discussion items.
All right, we have some curriculum requests, and to present those to us, we have our curriculum director, Beth Voss.
Okay. Yes, it's been a busy year for curriculum selection this year. We had a couple of big, both secondary math and secondary ELA, so 6th through 12th grade are both at that point in their 6-year curriculum review cycle, where it's time for both of them to review. So I'm just going to give a overview here of the process that we went through. And you do have this slideshow in your board packet, and included in there are lots of other links where you can get to the curriculum itself and be able to see all that it includes and all of the lessons. And there are links in there to the purchase quotes and so on. So, but I'm just going to give an overview of the process, what we selected, why we selected what we did, and an overview of each of those resources. Okay, so first of all, just to give you an idea of where each of these departments, what their needs are. So for secondary math, they've been using the curriculum called Big Ideas for the past several years, but that our contract with them is expiring, and they are actually moving on to a new and improved resource. Now, all of their print resources that we have, teachers' guides and student editions, we still have those. They're still in good condition. They're still usable, but we would be losing all of the digital access to some of the resources that teachers and students use online. So the high school teachers would like to continue using the print resources from Big Ideas that they can still teach from, and they still have the student editions. They've recently done a lot of work on their Big Ideas curriculum to align it to standards alignment. They did a new scope and sequence. They worked on pacing and assessments. So they would like to continue to use Big Ideas. However, losing that digital piece, we had a need to be able to have like a digital supplement to go along with it, as a way to get some additional resources, especially those tiered resources at a variety of levels, and to give students that interactive practice where they can get that feedback. So their need was just around a digital supplement to go along with Big Ideas. Middle school teachers, however, wanted to get something new that included both print and digital together. So they were looking at a whole new curriculum. And then for secondary ELA, similarly, the high school ELA curriculum, which is called Collections, is also, our license with them is expiring, and that curriculum is not renewing either. So we had to look in different directions for high school Collections, because we will lose access to the digital platform, and their student book is also a book that's mailed each year. It's a consumable that students write in and take home, so they would be losing access to that curriculum. So we needed to look at a whole new curriculum for them. And then middle school ELA, they've been using the MESA units, and that's been going really well for them. They would like to continue to use those units. However, they have noticed a gap in grammar and some of the writing skills instructions, so they were looking for just an additional piece to bring in some grammar and more writing practice. So we looked at just a supplement for them. So just to give you an overview of the process that we go through when we select a new curriculum, the first step is for the whole department to meet and really create a list of what we called our best practices or our must-haves that the whole department agrees is important in a curriculum. I mean, of course, we needed to teach our standards, but we also wanted to include some of our instructional best practices. So you'll be able to see a link there to the best practice list that the secondary math team put together with all of their input. And then step 2 is we decide on which resources to review. So based on recommendations, familiarity with the publishers, and doing some of our own review and research, the math team looked at 5 different resources. And then a selection team is determined, and that is a voluntary process. All of the secondary math teachers who wanted to be included on that team were able to be included, and it had a nice representation from middle school, high school, special education, and our academic coach, and myself. And then we met for a few days, full days, that included presentations from the different companies. It included reviewing. We got print samples and digital samples of all of the resources. So we looked at that to check for alignment to our standards and also to our best practices. And then the team continued to review those resources on their own time too, and even trying out some of the lessons with their students. And then step 5, a big piece of our process, is using what's called the hexagon tool. There's a link to that tool for you to see it in detail, but basically it takes you through, it's almost like a rubric that takes you through different components and asks some thoughtful questions around the components, and you end up giving each resource a score in the end. And so when you're comparing multiple things, it's a nice way to look at all of those against the same criteria and see how they score in the end. So I'll get into a little more detail about the hexagon tool in a minute, but that in the end, middle school ended up with Reveal Math coming on top for them, and high school for their supplemental resource chose one called EDIA. And then our last step here tonight is board approval. So just to give you a little more detail of what that hexagon tool is, because you'll probably hear that a lot. We'll be using the hexagon tool to select all of our, not just resources, but even initiatives. We'd use hexagon tool to select professional development, so it can be used for a lot of things. But basically, it's called the hexagon tool because it has 6 components. The green side of the hexagon, those are all the components that are specific to that program. So evidence. There's many questions that have you really dive into finding evidence around the effectiveness of that resource, what studies are out there that show its effectiveness. Usability, so how usable is that resource? There's questions that have you think through usability for both staff and students and community. And then supports, what supports are available through this resource. So is there professional development and training? Is there an expert you can call upon for support when you're implementing the new resource? And then the blue side are all specific to our district. So it's thinking through things specific to our district to make sure that this is a good fit. So one of them is lots of questions around the capacity. So do we have the staff? Do we have the time? Do we have the financial resources, technology resources to implement these well? Then there's a lot of questions around fit. So that goes along with, does it fit with our other initiatives? Like right now, a big initiative is MTSS. So does it fit with that? Does it fit with our department's best practices? And then need, does it meet the identified needs of our students? So that hexagon tool process takes a while to go through that whole rubric, and then we end up scoring each one. You can see how they scored on each of the categories, and then we got to end up with a total score in the end. I will say evidence is sometimes a hard one to score really high. The hexagon tool asks a lot for specific evidence related to your own students, and it's like if you were already using the program and using what evidence do you have that it's working with your own students. And of course, when it's a new resource for us, we don't have that evidence yet. So we ended up with Reveal for middle school was their choice, and EDIA was the high school's choice. And just a quick overview of each of those and why we selected them. So for Reveal, that was a complete curriculum. One of the things that our team really liked about that one was they found it quite engaging to students. They even used it with students, and students rated this one as their favorite. It helped. They liked how it made math relevant and how it sparked their interest. There was a lot of collaboration and student discourse in this program. Lots of ways to practice at many different levels with reteaching and extension resources available. Lots of support for English language learners, which was a must-have for our team. All of the resources are even available fully in Spanish if needed. Very comprehensive assessment system in Reveal, all the way from just a daily exit ticket all the way up to big benchmark assessments. And then along with that, teachers get really nice reports so they can really see how their students are doing with the standards. Makes it a nice way to be able to inform your instruction. Has lots of digital resources, videos, interactive practice, animations, which help to enhance the learning. Also, Reveal does offer an accelerated pathway, which was important to us in order to have students who are ready to be able to take Algebra 1 in 8th grade and be on that accelerated math path into high school. So there's the option to use that accelerated course. And it also pairs with ALEX, which is a resource that our district has had in use already. So that's a nice online adaptive learning program where students get really personalized instruction with lots of practice and immediate feedback. So you'll be able to check out Reveal with those links on the side there. There's a Padlet with lots of information. There's the demo account. You can get access to every grade level's lessons and all the resources. And then the purchase quote there, Reveal is just over $80,000 that's a 6-year purchase, and it includes 6 years of the digital access, the consumable workbook that comes for the students every year, and the professional development. And then EDIA was the high school's choice because they were just looking for a supplement to use with big ideas. EDIA was a really cool program. EDIA is basically an unlimited library of problems for teachers and students, and it includes all of the standards in high school. So a lot of the programs for high school might only include Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and geometry, but EDIA also included statistics and pre-calc and calc. So we liked that because it's something that could be consistently, commonly used across any of the math classes. And basically teachers will select the standard they're working on, and then even within that standard, they can select different problem types for that standard. They can drill down to exactly the types they want to include, and they can even select the difficulty level. And then it generates an assignment. The assignment can be assigned, it can be printed, or it can be assigned digitally. When it's assigned digitally, the students receive really a lot of support and scaffolds and feedback, so they can select step by step if they need some, and it will really guide them through every step of the problem, and give them feedback on if they're doing each step correctly, and explain what they've done wrong if they did anything incorrectly, so that students aren't just sitting not knowing what to do or practicing things incorrectly. They can also, students can continue to select try another one, and it will generate another similar problem, so they can just have that unlimited practice so that they can build up their confidence as they practice. EDIA also adjusts based on how they're doing, so if they are getting some incorrect, EDIA will keep them within that same standard, but it will make the difficulty level a little bit easier, so that they can start to experience that success and then build from there. So it's really personalized. And then it's great for teachers. They get reports on each of those standards on how their students are doing. And it will group their students into 3 groups for each standard. It calls the group ready. There's ready, needs practice, or needs help. So students who are showing ready, they can continue to practice those, maybe even at a more challenging level. Students who are in the needs practice just need additional practice opportunities with that same concept. And then needs help would be the students who really need to maybe be pulled into a small group, retaught the content, and then EDIA will automatically generate custom assignments for each of those levels of groups too. So it really allows for teachers to differentiate very well and provide that practice where students get just what they need and the support's built in. Also, EDIA is, you can assign it in over 100 different languages. So that was a big perk as well. All right, ELA, we went through the same process for ELA. So you'll see those same steps. You'll be able to see the best practice list that the ELA department came up with. ELA reviewed 2 resources for high school, Common Lit and StudySync. And then middle school just reviewed 1 called No Red Ink. Their needs were pretty specific, just around grammar and writing. This was really the only supplemental resource that included that. So, but we still did the full review to make sure that it was the right fit. Our team for that, for the high school team, it included all of the high school ELA teachers, plus myself and coaches. And the middle school included all of the middle school ELA teachers and myself and a coach as well. So we also met for days to be able to hear presentations and go through the reviews, complete the hexagon tool and so on. The hexagon tool results for ELA came out like this. So again, we're looking at those same 6 components, going through the questions under each of the pieces of the hexagon, and ended up with selecting Common Lit for high school. Scored really well with the hexagon tool, and then No Red Ink for middle school. So Common Lit, some of the highlights of Common Lit. Again, this is a complete curriculum. It includes reading, writing, speaking, and listening standards. Our teachers found it to be engaging, also encouraging that collaborative learning environment, real-world connections, interesting texts. Provided a lot of resources for differentiated instruction. One thing we really liked about Common Lit is that it's very adaptable and customizable, so there are lots of choices, choices for teachers and choices for students. So we liked that to be able to ensure a good fit for everyone. Again, this one had a very comprehensive assessment system too, from your daily lesson assessments all the way up to big benchmark assessments 3 times a year. And this also provides nice reports so students or teachers can get a good sense on how their students are progressing through the standards. We like that it incorporated novel studies and also book clubs, and included independent choice reading. which were all important department must-haves. It includes formal and informal writing, so students get practice writing to different audiences. They also had very complete lessons around vocabulary, grammar, and usage lessons as well. So again, you can check out Common Lit 2 with more detail off on the links on the side. This one is $34,500 for 6 years, and that includes access to all the curriculum and the assessments and their professional development. Common Lit also has a curriculum consultant, so that consultant can work with you through there is some supplemental units. Should you use any of those, they'll help to make sure that whatever you're selecting from, that you're not missing anything with your standards across the year. And then with Common Lit, because it's all digital, we would need to buy the books for the novels and book clubs. So we budgeted $30,000 for those novels and book club books across 9th through 12th grade. And then finally, No Red Ink is the middle school selection. Again, they were just looking for a supplement to give their students more instruction and practice in grammar and some writing skills. So No Red Ink provides over 1,000 lessons around grammar, mechanics, and writing. It allows students to get step-by-step support when they're drafting an essay and revising an essay. It incorporates ways to do self and peer review of their writing. Also includes assessments for teachers to use around grammar and writing, and rubrics that teachers can use, and they can customize those to fit their assignment. Another thing they liked was the over 2,000 quick write prompts. So one of the department's goals is to incorporate more quick writes to get students writing daily. And it includes state assessment prep, like for the M-STEP. So again, you'll be able to dig more deeply into that with those links off to the side. This one is a per year quote. For the number of students we would need licenses for would be just over $10,000. So I want to thank our selection teams. Our teams who took part in this process really put in a lot of time, not only just the days that we met as teams, but they also spent a lot of time on their own, really digging into the resources, trying the lessons with students, getting feedback. So they were very thorough and thoughtful in their process. And really every one of these 4 selections ended up being a unanimous decision by the team. They all felt really good about the selection as a team, and I feel good about each of these choices. So that wraps up our
Very good, thank you.
selections.
Does anybody have
Any
any questions for Beth?
I have a couple questions. One, well, first, thank you for the links, because
Yes.
it is a lot. I really
Yeah.
appreciate being able to play around in them, in the time that we have to do that, so thank you for sending all of
Yes.
those. With some of the curriculum changes, with like middle school picking one, high school picking the other, elementary uses something different, is there any concern for them being different curriculums for the kids to get used to? Is it
Yeah.
better? Is it?
Middle school and high school have been using different curriculums for quite a while now. Middle school has been using MESA units, I would say at least for 10 years now. And high school has used collections. Actually, now that we're moving to Common Lit, I feel like Common Lit is more similar to MESA. So I think we'll see stronger alignment there between middle school and high school. For math, I think what really drew middle or high school away from, the big packaged curriculums like Reveal, like what middle school chose, is that it doesn't provide that consistency across the high school. Like it's always Algebra 1, Algebra 2, and Geometry, but we offer more math classes than that. And so they wanted something that within high school, no matter what math class students are moving to throughout those 4 years, they have a resource that they're familiar with, and they're not trying to get used to one thing in stats, and they go to pre-calc and it's something else. And so that's why high school was really, drawn to that. Whereas middle school doesn't have that as much. There's sixth grade and there's seventh grade and there's eighth grade and then there's the accelerated, and those programs did provide everything for them. Now, elementary will go through a math review next year. So Reveal, if we end up with Reveal for middle school, we'll definitely want elementary to consider Reveal for sure, because it would be really nice to have that K-8 alignment. So we're definitely keeping that in mind as we move towards the elementary selection next year.
Thanks, Beth.
Yeah, and that's a great question. Beth, wouldn't you say, though, that one of the things is, it's the standards, it's the Michigan State
Yeah.
standards that we're
Yeah.
trying to align with. So
Yeah.
what's most critical is whatever curriculum you select, so whatever they select for sixth and eighth grade, will hit all those required 6 through 8 Michigan standards, so that when they get to the high school teachers know
Yeah.
with confidence they had those standards.
Yes, yes.
So that's the biggest
Yes,
piece,
and
is
any
we review
curriculum,
those.
when we were even deciding what to review in the, in the early stages, alignment to standards was number one, because then we know no matter what resource it is, that's what we need to be teaching, so, yeah. Okay, any other questions?
I'll just say thank you too, because this presentation was excellent, well done, so informational, and we've got a lot of websites to check
Yeah,
out to
lots
look further into
explore.
it, so thank
Let me
you.
know if you have questions as you do that digging in.
Will do. Thank
Okay,
you, Beth.
Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. So next up, middle school, high school wrestling mats. We need to update some of the mats there. If you look, there's actually 2 separate quotes, and our spending threshold set by, the government is 26,000. So anything under 26,000 typically doesn't come to the board. But in reality, we're ordering all these mats together. And so even though one set is 23,000 and the other set is 18,000, both under the threshold, it just felt like combined, that's $41,000 worth of wrestling mats, so we should present them. What they're looking at doing is, 2 of these are heavier duty, designed for like practice, everyday use, and 2 of them are competition mats. And so the competition mats are being purchased for the middle school, and the everyday practice mats are going to be used at the high school. So again, that's why, if you look at them individually, they didn't really reach the spending threshold, but because we're ordering mats all together, it just felt like we should bring those to the board so you could see what we're doing with those. If there's any questions about that?
Just a quick one. How
Sure.
long do they last? Like, what's the lifespan on those things?
Where's Gary? What do you think? 8 years, 10 years?
Oh, okay. That's better than I thought.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I thought we had gotten middle school ones in 06 or 07.
Didn't we, I thought we cycled some of the high school ones down, though. Are those,
No, those are actually the middle school ones, like the brand new ones that go to school.
oh, okay.
I thought that's what Watson had said. I think, what's that? Yeah, that's what I thought Coach Watson said they were at.
So they're definitely past their lifespan.
We'll have to double check. I don't wanna speak out. I think the Resolite one, that might be the cost for one instead of 2.
I,
You have to double-
we'll have to double check that. That came from Coach Silvera.
Because it says 2 sections, but it says 1 mat of 42 by 42.
Oh. Well, we definitely want 2 of them, so I will, before the 15th, I will make sure that it's,
Double check with that. Because he said, because they came in way more than I thought they were going to.
okay. Yeah, we definitely want to order 2 and 2, so I'll make sure.
Yeah, so that, but double check that before.
We will do that. Thank you. Any other questions about the mats? So the next thing on the list is furniture. The lift-top elementary desks, the ones that we have were original when that building opened, and that's 17 years ago? 15, something like that, 17 years ago. And you can imagine, using those every day for that many years, we just need to make some replacements. So the quantity we're seeking to purchase is 230 of those, and the total would be $47,000. We do still have a little bit of bond money left from the 2017 bond, so these desks can actually be purchased out of those bond dollars.
Dr. Cooper,
Yep.
are there any of those desks in the trailers by the high school?
Ha! First question I asked, Mr. Thurk, there are no desks available in the, I think it's all chairs out there, so,
Thank you.
yeah. Absolutely. Next up, Zero Eyes. So Zero Eyes gun detection. So there was a grant opportunity to apply for some funds for security. Zero Eyes is a detection software that ties into a school's existing security camera system. So you don't need new cameras as long as the entry points that you want to check are all covered. And then what the Zero Eyes has done is they've built recognition software in to quickly identify a weapon. And so it does not scan backpacks or anything like that. So if a student's hiding it, but the second they take it out of the backpack, the software will recognize that there's a weapon in the building. It immediately calls it in, calls the school, puts it in lockdown. And so when we applied for the grant, it was one of those grants where depending on how many schools applied for it, it determined how much money you would get. And so when the total came back, we actually got enough to pay the initial $330,000 for the first year. Then we will need to pay $7,500 for the next 4 years. And I'm pretty sure that that $10,000 platform fee is also covered by the grant. So we'll be able to utilize this software in conjunction with our current security camera system in all of our buildings. And it'll only cost us nothing this year, but then for the next 4 years, only $7,500 a year to have this security system locked in. So pretty exciting opportunity.
I don't have that information in my packet.
Oh. Okay. I apologize.
There is a website that I looked at, and it's got, I mean, I know it doesn't help now, but it does have a ton of information on it, it's really good.
Yeah, I can send it out after the meeting.
Thank you.
But, yeah, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that wasn't in the packet.
So
Yeah, I think they even have some video stuff or something.
you said, and it goes all cameras, like gyms, or what, how does that?
It won't lock into every camera. I think you have to select certain points in the building. So like your access points, you're going to want, entry points into the building, your main hallways. I'm not exactly sure exactly how many cameras you can cover, but it's a significant number in each building.
Would this be for all schools?
Yep. Yep. Now, we've talked about, as we do, if the bond were able to pass and we're able to do some upgrades at the football stadium, for example, maybe add some more security out in that area as well. And if we started to do some of that, it would cost us more, because the more streams you have, the more you'd have to pay for that, but it'd be something we'd want to look into, I'm pretty sure.
Is there any fear of like a false, like shutting something down with a false alarm? Like how specific is it? Is it looking for knives, guns?
I think there's quite a few schools already using it. I haven't heard of anybody having a false reading. I guess better safe than not, yeah. But I have not heard of any schools going, man, we keep locking down because of this software. I don't think they've had any concerns with that.
So when it detects a gun or a weapon? Is it just guns or,
I believe it's just guns.
okay. Where does the alert get sent to?
So they notify the police and the school immediately.
Okay.
Yeah. They notify the school to go into lockdown, and they notify law enforcement.
So that would include Deputy Ortman. That would be on that first year.
Okay. Next up is the safety grant. This is, it's another grant that we applied for from the state. And just, you know, it's kind of a side note, I was at a workshop about a month ago, and they were talking about how 10 years ago, 90% of school funding came through the student foundation allowance, and then the other 10% was grant. And now about 69% of the funding comes from the per pupil, and the rest is in these grants. So our legislators, thankfully, are putting this money out there, making it available, but they keep pulling it out and they earmarking it for very specific things. And so you have to go get it, and we go get every pot that we can get. This is another one where we originally thought we would be eligible for close to $500,000 in funding, but because some schools didn't apply for it, we were going to get over $600,000 in funding. And so it's pretty exciting. And one of the things that we asked for is so that we could put 6-foot-high fences around the playgrounds at the ECC. We just think it's an added level of security, especially on the Pierce Road side. You know, you hate to think it could ever happen, but it's just such a fast road. Somebody pulls up, grabs a kid over the fence, and off they go. So that 6-foot-high fence will help with that. It also slows down students that might be prone to running, and so that will be a help. So the plan would be to put in the 6-foot fencing around the ECC, and then we would repurpose that fencing that's there. One of the areas we want to address is behind Oakwood here. We have fencing along the property line and back, but some of the property line there's woods between the playground and the property line. And so we've got kids that can get into the woods. And again, sometimes you have students that are more prone to wandering off. And so we want to move fencing along the line of the playgrounds to keep students out of that wooded area and back. And so, yeah, we have to replace that fence, but we will repurpose that fence. And so the price for that is $132,440. And again, that's all being paid for out of the safety grant that we were able to secure.
Dr. Cooper, so if you have 600,000, what's the remainder go to?
There's a list of things, so it was safety and mental health. And so we're able to pay for some of our social workers out of that. We're able to pay for, I believe, some of our, school or home liaisons, OCSN, right?
Those people along the counselors.
Yeah. So we're able to pay salaries with that other part because it addresses mental health and safety. So I put safety grant, but it's more of a they actually required that at least half of it be for mental health support. I think the fencing is the only, is that the only safety? Yeah, that's the only safety piece from that grant. The rest all went towards mental health support. Staff chair, so you do not have, I know you don't have an attachment for this one. Again, this wouldn't impact the ECC because their furniture is pretty new, but of our other buildings, the staff furniture is pretty old. And again, you use those chairs for 10, 15 years and they wear out. So the plan is that Mr. Torno is going to provide several samples, go to each building, and then teachers can try out the chairs and sign up for the one they like, and then we'll figure out from there what the cost will be. So when we come on April 15th, we'll know how many of each of the styles we need to order and what the total cost would be. But we just want to give teachers a chance, and staff, support staff also, to try out the chairs themselves, rather than just ordering 400 of one style chair. We want to have, I think, 2 or 3 options. Yeah. So, yeah, so that they can try them out. And then there'll be a form that they can fill out so we know which one they want to order. Okay. And then last thing I have is the Neola policy updates. And so I'm going to go through those, go through these one at a time. The first one, policy 1240, is related to changes that went through in legislation last year regarding evaluations. We've already done the updates to teacher and administrator evaluations, but this one is specific to superintendent evaluations. And so that was 1240. Do you want me just to go through all of these, Anna, or did you want me to go one and ask for questions after each one? All right, so any questions about 1240? You can see there's a lot of language about, prior to July 2024, after July 2024. They took out some of the language regarding student achievement percentages. There's only going to be 3 categories now instead of 4 categories.
Dr. Cooper, this one is in direct relation to the MCL that passed for the change, right? It's
Yep.
not adding to or taking away, it's purely just that MCL.
Yep, it's from the Michigan compiled laws that governs all evaluations. They just had to change a little bit of the language for teachers, and there was a separate policy for administrators, and now there's a separate policy for, well, there's always been a separate policy for superintendent. Okay, policy 2410. This is a policy that Neola is recommending that we remove completely. The law changed on this. It is about the prohibition of referral for assistance. This speaks specifically to the law, which is no longer in effect. And so that's why Neola is recommending that we just remove this policy altogether. Questions?
Yep.
Okay.
What law? Is it this MCL?
I'm a little confused on this. I know some of the laws have changed a little bit, but I guess I would be very concerned with Neola's recommendation here on removing this policy in regards to this is probably not something that we would want involved at our school. So I guess I'm just a little concerned on some more of the background information here and why we would want to go this route.
Well, again, this is in response to the fact that this law no longer exists, this language no longer exists, and so this policy would be in direct conflict with the law. Now, you can keep the policy if you want to keep the policy, but you have to follow the law. And so this policy wouldn't follow the law.
Can we get some more information on what parts of the policy won't follow? Because I looked some of those up and I'm struggling to marry the two together.
Okay. Yep. I was thinking it was in my weekly update, but if not, then I'll have to.
If it was, I'll go back to it.
Yeah, I can look too.
So on that law, that MCL 388.1766, in the little compiler's note that they had online, it said, "The repealed section pertains to a disciplinary policy for referral of pupil for abortion or assisting pupil in obtaining abortion."
Yeah.
So is it just the disciplinary part?
That's my understanding, is that, it used to be prohibited, and that if a staff member, administrator, board member, it even listed, were to offer assistance or referral to a student about abortion information, then there, was a violation, and there could be a consequence. So now they have lifted that and said there's not a consequence for those.
The way the law read it made it seem like you can't have a criminal consequence, like the state wouldn't charge them, like you wouldn't go to a court of order, but it didn't, I couldn't see any reference to where the school couldn't still say, this topic is off the table for discussion from some sort of school official to a student and still say you would be subject to disciplinary action here because that is not something that we're going to engage in at the school level.
So when I talked to Neola, they made it seem like that would be a violation of the law for us to have punitive language, because that was the whole intent of the rescinding of this law, was to remove anything punitive. I'm happy to check with the attorney again, but that's my only concern.
Yeah, I would love it if you would check with our attorney on that. My concern with this is that we would be removing parents from such an important life decision for their child, and essentially then taking away parents' rights. And if something like this were to happen, I feel like we're now messing with someone's First Amendment rights. So I feel removing this policy puts us in another type of hole, So,
Removing this policy without something to continue to prohibit this type of conversation is not something that I would be for. I think that opens up staff members, anyone who would have this, to an extreme amount of risk. We're not healthcare professionals at a school. This is healthcare talk, but if you have a policy without disciplinary action, there's not a whole lot of teeth to violating the policy, so that seems like that would be silly. So a different legal opinion, I would be very curious to see what Coleman has to say about this one too. I understand what Neola says. I'm kindly disagreeing with them. Would like some more information on that.
Well, this does come up again in the next two policies, and I think the next two policies lend themselves to some modification of the language whereby you could, the board could express your preference, right? I think this entire policy is about the prohibition, which no longer exists. So I think that's why they're recommending you do away with this policy, because it's the whole thing is about the prohibition. That prohibition is no longer there. That's why this policy should no longer be there. But in the next two policies, you have an opportunity, I think, if you want to express the board's preference on this, you can do that.
yeah, it seemed like it was the exact same language, minus the in accordance with Michigan statute in the other two policies.
Yeah, but the other two policies have a lot more than just the punitive side of it. There's a lot more language there, and it addresses a lot more work-related issues, and that's why I think there's an opportunity in the other two to express those concerns that you have, to address those in those policies. This one, it's all about the law, and the law changed, and so if you keep this one, this policy then would be oppositional to the law, where I think you could make changes to the next two policies and not be in
Couldn't-
violation of the law.
Couldn't we still keep the policy, however, make it like our own house policy
Well, that was a question that was asked, and I'm pretty sure you'd still be in violation of the law.
of the MCL?
Yeah.
So my understanding then is, because the law has changed, if we, or anyone has an issue, it's a legislative thing that they need to contact their elected representatives if they're trying to make a change. We don't have the ability to do that.
No, and I mean, you could keep this policy, but I wouldn't enforce it. Like, you're not gonna be in violation of the law if you don't enforce it. But again, if you can't enforce it, then there's no teeth to it, so what's the point of it?
I think that's the part that I'm a little confused on, is I read the laws, and it really seems as though, as a school, we still would have the decision to say, this is not something that we wish to partake in. We are not going to prosecute you, or we're not going to refer you to a district attorney or do anything like that. But as a school, No, just like any of the other policies we have, that does not, I don't agree that that would be in direct violation of what the law says. The other, like reading the constitutional amendments and things that passed. So we need a lot more clarification on that, because reading it for what it's worth at face value, understanding I'm not an attorney, but they don't compute to me. The other concern I have is making some of these changes now. There's a lot of legal challenges that are happening with some of these laws right now that are not finalized, and maybe so having to continually revisit that seems a little silly as opposed to waiting. But I need a lot more clarification on this, because I guess I disagree that policy specifically speaks to the law outside of using the term prohibition. And then the same, like Anna had pointed out, it's the same verbiage. I think as a district, we can still say, we can have these conversations, we cannot have these conversations.
I think going to 2418 may lend some to what you're speaking of, because it talks about requiring a disciplinary action. And you don't, I think as a school district, if we want to insert a disciplinary action for this discussion, we can, but it's not required. And so I think that could be lending to something of what you're talking about. If our district wanted to have a policy around that, we're not required to have a disciplinary action, but we still can if we so choose. And that's just a couple policies later.
So I will check and see what Coleman thinks about whether or not we need to remove that policy, or
Yeah,
if
and
it
I
can.
would think maybe even all three of them right there, since they're all kind of tied together. I know we're gonna get to them, but.
Yeah, they're pretty similar, except that, like I said, I think there's room within the next two. So should I move on? So 2414 is a revised reproductive health and family planning. Again, they are recommending that you strike out the language that says, additionally, any school official, member of the board, or employee of the board who's not the parent or the legal guardian of the student involved is prohibited from referring a student for an abortion or assisting a student in obtaining an abortion. They're recommending that we remove that language. That's where I think if you wanted to modify that language, what I would recommend is that you say something that, like the Allendale Public Schools Board of Education acknowledges that the law has changed, which prohibits this. However, the board, encourages, recommends, whatever word you want, whatever word that we can vet that out and find out how we can do it without violating the law. But whatever our directive is, whatever your directive is, I think that's where you could fit that into the policy to make it clear that this board is saying, don't do that.
Yeah, I think I definitely want stronger language than that. I guess from my understanding, we cannot prohibit a student from partaking in what they wish to do. But this is specifically speaking to somebody affiliated with the school assisting in that process by referring. That's the piece the law stated that that a healthcare official could do that, not necessarily a school. So I guess I just don't see any place for the school in there. So again, I know I said that, but I feel very strongly that it should be in our policies that this is not acceptable. Not that we encourage it not to happen, but that this on school grounds is not an acceptable use of our officials. So if we rework the policy, it would need to be very strong language.
Okay. Yeah, I thought there might be concerns about this, but I'm presenting it the way Neola presented it so we could have this conversation, so that I know exactly what to ask the attorney. So happy to do that. So going on to 2418, similar thing, same language that they want to strike out. And so I'll need to speak with the attorney to see how we can address that locally.
I would like to just make sure that, you know, if we're referencing Coleman for this, we're also talking to Neola to make sure, we can just make sure both are on the same page.
Well, I can tell you that, and I'm happy to talk to Neola. If you change any language in a policy, they cease to, not support it necessarily, but they won't warranty it. They don't warranty it or whatever, yeah.
Yep. I just
So-
want to make sure that, you know,
Yep.
it's being read appropriately from both groups.
Yeah, I'm happy to do that too. I can tell you again from the conversation I've already had with Neola, I think that they're going to tell you that this is their recommendation based on their interpretation of the law. And any modifications that we want to make, which we are welcome to make, it's our board policy, just means that, and again, if you're using Coleman as your attorney and Coleman supports any changes you make, and there's a challenge to the policy, then you would want your attorney to support that, right? So, so it doesn't really matter that Varnum wouldn't necessarily support it per se, because they wouldn't necessarily be the ones supporting us if we change the language.
Yeah, I guess I'm not really concerned with if they support the language, but if they believe, in fact, that it's being interpreted the correct way. That's what I would like to know.
Yep, I can ask them. Good, all right, yep, I knew I would need to follow up on those, and this was the information I needed, thank you. So professional staff evaluation, 3220. This, if you go through this policy, the changes in here, let me see. Yeah, this is the grammatical, there's like 2 or 3 grammatical changes that they fixed. Changed the word not to know. Struck out the words by a in front of consortium, so this one was just a couple of small grammatical changes is all. Purchasing, so 6320 is a change to the purchasing. This, for the most part, stayed the same. The biggest difference were some wording changes, and I think some of that is related to the prevailing wage. You know, Michigan has reinstituted a prevailing wage for construction issues, and so they made some slight modifications to this policy to address the prevailing wage change. That's the same thing in 6321. Again, this, just small words. Some of it's just grammatical and, you know, changing one word here, one word there. But again, just kind of tightens up the language. This was in reference to the prevailing wage changes. And then 6325, same thing, because this is about using federal grant money. So each one of these is sort of a different type of spending, but each one has been modified to address the changes in prevailing wage. Small changes. Any questions on any of those 3 prevailing wage? And then here's a brand-new one, which is 6350, and that is the new language related to the prevailing wage. And it just says that, you know, we will make sure that any contractors that we use follow the law on prevailing wage. Okay? 6520, this is regarding payroll deductions, and again, this is to address changes in the law. One of the things I think we mentioned last year was some of the para changes that were made, and that's the negotiations changes. One of the things that school districts used to traditionally do was to collect union dues for the teachers' union, as well as the support unions. But that law changed in 2011, and now this has been reinstituted. Basically, whether or not we're going to collect union dues has to be negotiated into any of our union contracts. So it won't automatically happen. It would be good to pass this policy so that when we enter into our next round of negotiations, if this comes up and the unions ask us to collect dues, then we already have it on the books that we're able to do that in accordance with the law. But again, just because we pass the policy doesn't mean that we automatically start collecting dues. And then policy 8800, this one is in response to religious or patriotic ceremonies. Again, changes in the statutes that allow for some broader interpretation of how staff may engage in both patriotic ceremonies as well as religious ceremonies. One of the things that is key in here is that there were challenges because some districts would be asked about certain particularly religious activities such as meet at the pole. Are you all familiar with that, where students want to meet at the flagpole in the morning, maybe say a prayer? Or maybe they would have a group of staff members who would want to do a prayer meeting in the morning before school. And there were districts that would just say, nope, it's too close to the Establishment Clause, it violates the Establishment Clause, without doing any kind of, due process to see if it really does violate the Establishment Clause. And in most cases, it does not. If you do it correctly, there's ways to have those type of activities and not violate the Establishment Clause. And so they made these changes so that districts understand that, hey, there are certain things, we're still prohibited, for example, from holding a baccalaureate ceremony each year. We're not allowed to participate in baccalaureate. We can't advertise baccalaureate. So there are still some restrictions on what school districts can engage with when it comes to religious ceremonies. However, each situation should be looked at individually. If someone wants to do a Bible study after school, which, we do, then they need to make sure, does it really violate or not? Too many districts were just out of hand saying, nope, too close to the Establishment Clause, so they changed the language here. So I would recommend taking these changes because it gives us some flexibility, but it also, makes sure we're doing our due diligence. And that's it. So I will find out those other answers. I'll try to get to them this week before I leave on Friday. If not, Troy can do it when he comes back from break. No, I'll try really hard to get an answer from Coleman before I leave. I'll send him an email tonight before I go, in fact, and then get that back to you for consideration, so we'll have plenty of time before the 15th to kind of mull over what we want to do with it, especially if we don't want to, like if there's something between taking it out and leaving it in, right? Like if those are our only two options, then it's pretty easy to decide. But if there's something where, no, you should modify if you want to make a statement, then I want to make sure you have as much time as possible to think about what that modification might look like, if that makes sense.
Yep. All right. Any more discussion on that? Okay, we're going to move on to public comment. Amy? No? All right, is there anybody that would like to make a public comment? Ronnie? Please state your name at the mic, please.
Ronnie Allen, Allendale. I think one of the more covert issues, and maybe that's not the right word, but with Proposal 3 that I saw, was the language in it and the way it was trying to identify children as individuals legally. And I think it was an attempt to do exactly what we're doing right here, to initiate those conversations. However, my concern, it's at odds with Michigan state law, prior law. and when applied to policies. The law says it's the natural fundamental right of parents and legal guardians to determine and direct the care, teaching, and education of the children. So additionally, precedent and case law always play into how a law is actually acted out and walked out and interpreted. So when there are laws that conflict, it seems to be a little bit jumping the gun for the schools to change policies, rather than letting the legal issues ensue and then rewriting the policy, particularly in this type of situation where we're, rather than protecting families and students and individual rights and parental rights, which are well-defined and have been historically, under prevailing law, existing law, over the protection of adults in the schools, which, especially in this climate, there's just a lot of agendas out there, whether it be my agenda, your agenda, anyone's agenda. So I do think that needs to be done carefully.
Thank you. Anybody else? Come on over to the mic and please state your name.
Krista Yetzke, Allendale. Just a couple things. I did look up the Michigan revised school code, and they haven't changed their policy. They still say what ours does, that that no staff is allowed to recommend abortion, talk about abortion, and that there should still be discipline. So I feel like why are we here discussing this? And then, as has been mentioned a couple times about the 14th Amendment, which is the federal constitution, and as I understand it, that constitution would trump anything our state would do. And if they're protecting parental rights, I would think that again, would negate this. And I just ask that you leave the policy as it is. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please state your name in the mic.
Hi, my name is Julie Norkley. You guys were doing a lot of talk about curriculum and math and ELA, and a lot of it was online stuff. My question is, can the teachers see what the kids actually get wrong, or do the teachers only get a report? I'd like to know if the teachers can, see what the kids are actually working on. And then you talked a little bit about the Ottawa Community School Network, and I've heard some concerns about the school network, like who has oversight for the network, because they're paid here, it sounds like maybe with grant money, but I know at some other schools they're paid somehow through the United Way. So you have these people operating in your schools that are getting paid through the United Way. So if a parent has a problem with something that happens with one of those school counselors that goes through the Ottawa Community School Network, who do they reach out to get their issue resolved? They can't really reach out to the school principal or the superintendent, or it's just really unclear because they're paid through the United Way, and then you have the other one paid through the OAISD, so oversight is really confusing. I'd encourage you to look into that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? All right, that's all we have for our meeting tonight. Do we have a motion for adjournment?
Make a motion to adjourn at 7:08 PM.
Support. All right, motion by Kevin, supported by Pam, to adjourn at 7:08 PM. All in favor, say aye. Aye. All opposed, say the same. Motion passes. Meeting is adjourned at 7:08 PM.